Welcome everyone to So Connected and our session today, the importance of multilingual resources in the STEM classroom. Before we jump into the main event, I do want to quickly review some housekeeping items. So you're encouraged to write any and all questions you have in the Q&A located in the bottom toolbar, and we'll get to the Q&A towards the end of the session. This session, along with all of today's So Connected sessions, will be recorded. So please keep an eye out in your email inbox for the recordings over the next week. If you have any questions following the session, please email info@labster.com. And without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Selinda Martinez and Juliana Kelley from Laredo College. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Awesome. So just to jump into things, why don't you both tell us about your role over at Laredo College and describe the student demographic of your courses?
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Selinda Martinez, and I've been working as a biology instructor here at Laredo College for about 7 years now. I'm also the department chair for natural sciences. And I would say that I teach mainly general biology for majors and for non-majors. I've taught it both face-to-face and online. I taught online both before the pandemic and after the pandemic, and kind of have learned a lot of lessons along the way. Basically, my demographics of my student population, we have mainly Hispanic. We have about 97%, I would say, Hispanic students, as we live really close to the border. So Laredo, Texas is a border city here in Texas. And the majority of our students are also part-time students. So they come to school mainly kind of part-time. And then they do work. So they are very much in favor of online classes because it affords the convenience of being able to go to work and taking classes at the same time. So I would say those are pretty much my demographics for the courses that I teach.
Awesome. Thank you, Selinda. And what about you, Juliana?
Yes, well, good afternoon, everyone. It is about 1 o'clock here in Laredo, Texas. And I come from 15 years of teaching at the high schools, and I've been here at the community college for about 6 years. My courses that I teach are biology as well. I teach a lot of the specialty courses like zoology, botany. I dive a little bit into micro. And then same as Selinda, you know, our population here is quite unique that we have a high percentage of Hispanics taking our course. A lot of our students actually come also from Laredo, Mexico. They walk across every day to get educated here. So we do have a unique environment here at our college. So welcome, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing that. And you know, it's so important to meet students where they're at. So when it comes to language barriers, what is needed to better support the multilingual STEM classroom?
I would basically say, I mean, that's a very important question, right? Especially since we deal with a lot of students, as Mrs. Kelley was mentioning, that come from Mexico whose first language is not English. So I would say it is a very important aspect to where we live and to teach based on our demographic. And the importance of it is basically trying to find those resources available for those particular students. And that is one of the things that we struggle with, is trying to find resources that are multilingual, because many times they are just in one language. And I would often say, you know, science is a unique language in and in itself. And it is very challenging for students to learn that particular language on top of trying to understand or learn English as a second language. Then it becomes even more challenging. So one of the things that we've been trying to focus on, me and Mrs. Kelley, is looking into trying to find more resources available for these students to help them make those important connections.
Yes, I agree with you, Selinda. One thing that I've been trying to look for, and we're very limited, I've even contacted our publisher, is try to find textbooks. I know that at the high schools, they offer these multi-language textbooks for the high school students, but once we get to the college level, they seem to disappear. McGraw doesn't have any, at least our biology textbooks that we have right now, they don't have any that I know of. We were trying to see if Pearson had some biology books or chemistry books in Spanish or other languages, right? And I think this is really contingent on where you're at, what part of the country. If obviously you're in New York City, then your population is going to be different. So you're going to be looking for resources that, meets your needs. So, but there's very limited textbooks in Spanish, article journals as well, like primary literature. Some of them, the abstract will be translated, but other ones will not. And then just also in terms of resources for educators, for college professors, are there any websites available? I would like to see that, somewhere online where it has all these, things that we can use as educators in the classroom. I mean, again, not to say that the students, they're going to be held accountable, like I've mentioned previously, in English, but for the comprehension, the concepts, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, if they learn it, if they know it in their language, then I think it'll be easier for them to be able to give us that information in English. But I think just in comprehension is what we're looking for, material that are available for our students. That's a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very interesting just to hear, your area having to look for resources, like you said, your needs, that the needs might be a little bit different from a different area of the country. And it sounds like you're both doing a lot to find these resources. But without these multilingual resources, I know you mentioned comprehension was a big thing, but what are some other challenges that arise without having a multilingual resource?
I guess some of the challenges that could arise is just, if I had to put a word to it, would just be, I guess, frustration. Students kind of hitting that barrier and not having, as Mrs. Kelley put it, that comprehension. It's very discouraging to students as they struggle through it. And what I tend to notice is when students tend to struggle, then they start almost having that kind of, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. This kind of, I'm basically defeatist attitude, where it's basically, I'm done. I can't do this. It's just too difficult for me. Maybe this course wasn't for me. And that is kind of the last thing that we want students to feel. We want students to be able to say, well, it may not be that you don't understand the material. It may be actually a language barrier. So we've come up with kind of strategies to say, if you feel comfortable kind of responding back in your own language, go ahead and do so. And here, being on the border, a lot of us do speak the different language, and we can be able to interpret it. But it's going to be, that's the difficulty, right? And without those resources, they'll feel kind of lost and insecure and unsure about, okay, am I writing this correctly? Am I saying it correctly? And that's the difficulty part of it. Some of the challenges that we've had to kind of overcome is trying to make them feel comfortable enough to be able to understand the material, but yet find those resources available to make those significant connections.
Yes. And ultimately, another thing too, in terms of the challenges and the pitfalls that we would have, is this is going to lead to academic failure. Perhaps it's not that, just in the comprehension, like I mentioned, if they can't comprehend the material, if they are paying out of pocket, it's going to lead to money loss on their part. Graduation rates go down, academic failure for the student, and they might have to take the course again, where if they had those resources available to them, or to educators where we could provide them or gear them in the right direction, then maybe they'll hold on to the class and stay a little bit longer, versus just kind of like Selinda said, just give up and say, I'm out of here. I don't understand this material. So I think that's going to be a major, major challenge, I think, for colleges and universities, that the students just drop and, withdraw from the course.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say, like, student engagement is also such a large part, and you want to bring in that engagement, the motivation to want to learn. And I think with those resources available, they'll become motivated or more engaged in the material, instead of trying to really struggle and trying to learn basically essentially two different languages, the language of science and then a new, and then English, trying to make that connection. And it is difficult. It is very difficult for those students to try to comprehend both things and place it together, when if they have this other resource, they may become more engaged and more motivated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And so I know you just spoke about, a few different considerations, student engagement, things like that. But in terms of implementing these resources that you were speaking about, looking into, what are some other considerations that instructors and faculty should keep in mind when they're implementing these things?
I think one thing that that educators should really consider is try to contact publishers, right? Don't be afraid to contact your local publisher, call them up. There's whatever book you're using, call them up and see if they have it. And if not, start requesting them. Say, hey, I would like to see this. I think if there's a push from in the academic world and we ask our publishers to do this, then maybe they'll be like, okay, they want in this part of the country books that are translated in Korea. Over here, we want more Mandarin. Over here, we want this language. So I think the educators have to make that push. Make sure that it's, know your student population, right? Where are they coming from? What language do they speak, etc. So know your student population. And then whatever you use, in terms of resources, make sure that it's evidence-based instruction. You want to always teach with evidence-based, something that is proven to work. It might not work in your area, but hopefully, you try new stuff. As educators, sometimes you try something that's evidence-based and you're like, okay, my students flopped, it didn't work. So just, I think that's the main thing. As an educator, you have to be the one that kind of speaks for the students.
Selinda? Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. And for me, it's also a little bit part of training as far as how to even implement many of these resources. So once you do have that resource, once you find that incredible software, that incredible program, how do you implement it effectively within your class? Right. And that is very key, because there are times where I'll find this excellent resource, but then it's okay, how do I put it in my classroom? How do I get students to look at this particular resource? Right. And then I would say that it's also a little bit about patience, right? Because it is going to take time for students to kind of go through these materials, make those connections. So as far as the instructor part, a lot of it is also patience and being flexible to help work with the student. And that is one thing that I've kind of noticed with some of these resources, is just be patient with the student as they kind of work through the material, because it is going to take them time. And it's just very important to have a little bit of that flexibility, to be able to work with the student and know where they're coming from. And it's like Julie was kind of mentioning, know your students, know their backgrounds, know their struggles, where they're having the difficulty. If it's a language barrier, help providing those resources, but also how to implement it within your classroom, that would be the most effective.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really great to hear how much you both have been, advocating for your students and being aware of their needs, in order to teach them most effectively in the classroom. So beyond language barriers, what are other ways that we, as a community of STEM educators, how can we support the unique needs of community college students? So such as the non-traditional student. I know you mentioned you have a lot of those within your courses.
I guess some of the resources, now that we've gone online, that has presented a unique challenge in the sense of trying to provide students with accessible Wi-Fi to be able to do their homework, to be able to do a lot of this instruction, having accessibility to that type of technology, having laptops available for them. I know here at our college, we do provide some laptops for our students, or allowing them to get some hotspots that will be allowing them to be able to access a lot of this kind of software if they don't have access to it. So I know that is one of the things that we've been kind of working on, is how to provide that accessibility to all students, especially those that may not have that type of resource available to them.
Yeah, I think so. And then again, here at our college, because we are in a unique area of the country, we don't have so much like the racial diversity like in other parts of the country, in terms of, we're 97% Hispanic, which is good for us. We're promoting that. However, we do have social economic disparity here in our community. So we have some students who cannot afford college. So that's going to be our inequality here. And what we've done at our college is we have offered free tuition this semester to all students. So that has really, really helped us in terms of getting everybody on board. Like, hey, it's free tuition this semester. We don't know how long we're going to sustain it, but for this fall, we were able to offer that to all of our students, thank God. And I think that really helped us bridge that little gap in terms of that, disparity there with the socioeconomic status of our students.
Awesome. That's really great to hear what the work you both are doing just to make education, more accessible for your students. So those are all the questions that we had to cover within the program. So I'm going to move over to some audience Q&A. So if you haven't already, feel free, everyone, to put any questions that you may have for these two in the Q&A section. So we're going to get started here with the first question. So what can you give to women pursuing a career in STEM?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, because it broke up on my end over here.
Kind of glitchy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's what advice can pursuing a career in STEM?
Okay, so if I understood the question correctly, it says, what advice can you give to women pursuing a career in STEM? So that is actually a really interesting question. I know that I've had a lot of interesting career changes along the way. My bachelor's is in education and math education. And then I decided to get my master's in biology, and currently getting my PhD in curriculum and instruction with a focus in STEM education. And one thing that I've always told my students to kind of give them kind of advice is to never give up, to always pursue your dreams, no matter what challenges lie ahead of you. Always keep an eye on that goal, right? Don't let something like a language barrier bring you down. There are always those type of resources kind of available to you, but also seek out advice. And I know that sometimes it's hard because going into a science field, sometimes it's hard to find that kind of role model, especially because of the demographics once you go up higher in your education level. But know that they're there, and we are all kind of here to help. Never give up, reach for as much as possible. And that's usually what I kind of tell my students, that no matter what it is, you can do it. You can do it. There is no barrier in place. If you have that goal, that dream, just keep at it. Just keep at it.
And I think for women specifically, find a mentor. I think that would also be a really good idea for women pursuing careers in STEM. Find a mentor, find a group of colleagues or students or faculty members that are like you or unlike you, right? Find someone that you can kind of gravitate to and learn from them. And if the resources are not available, then I would tell my students who are pursuing careers in STEM, then you start it. You start it up. Like if there is an organization that's lacking or missing, or then you start it up. Don't be afraid to be a go-getter as well, because then that's going to put you at the forefront of your career, right? If you start some program, an organization, or something to help others. So don't be afraid to be a go-getter in that terms of of help. Let's see, what else? What was the other question here? I think I saw another one come in, guys. how are we able to afford free tuition this semester? The questions, Selinda, are in the Q&A chat, by the way.
Okay, yes, I see them.
couldn't hear you earlier, Bridget. It was lagging. So I was like, oh, I think the questions are here. So it says, how are you able to afford free tuition this semester? I believe it was through the CARES grant, correct, Selinda, if I'm not mistaken? Yay.
Yeah, so we were able to get some state funding in the form of grants that allowed us to give free tuition. Now, even though we did give free tuition, students did have to pay for certain fees still available within the college, but it allowed students to be able to come back into college, because one of the things that we've realized now that we're coming back from the pandemic is that a lot of students are working. Now they're full-time workers. They're not able to dedicate as much time as they were before the pandemic. So I've kind of noticed a spike, and I can't speak for everywhere else, but I know that here we've seen just a spike of our students saying, you know what, I work full-time. I work full-time, or now they're kind of displaced where some of them are living out of town and are not able to make it here to campus. So I know that there's been a push for kind of online courses simply because there are students who have been kind of displaced. Some have gone back to Mexico, some are from out of town, and it was very difficult. And I know that some students also had to work kind of full time. And the issue right now is, am I able to afford college, to go back to college, to take courses? And one of the initiatives here was to use that money, that grant money, to cover tuition for our students. Right, and that did help. As soon as we kind of did that, we had an influx of students registering for courses. It's so excited to kind of come back, but again, the difficulty there was, am I able to afford it? So now we're seeing a lot from the economic standpoint, and seeing where students are having to struggle a little bit about going to work and doing school at the same time. So that's another challenge that we've been having to face lately.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question here is, do your students use Labster? And if so, what has your experience been like with Labster?
My students in 1108 biology for non-majors and in environmental, they love Labster. I post discussions periodically throughout the semester asking them, how is Labster? How are the simulations? How can we change it? What should I do differently? And it's usually about 99% of the students who enjoy the simulations. They love the fact that it's like a video game and they're learning at the same time. So occasionally you'll have one student who's having trouble with technical difficulties on their end, and they're like, I hate it. But other than that, the students love it. I think it's really helped students, learn the content, right? Because especially the students that are using the simulations on our end, they're at home. We don't see them at all, right? It's a strictly online course. So they love it on my end. I don't think I've had, any negative reviews. Selinda, I don't know about your students, but my students love it.
Yeah, and since we've been kind of teaching more of these labs online, it's definitely been a journey for me. I've seen it where before Labster, when I was first teaching online labs, we would use different type of simulations. I would say the biggest difference is the fact that with Labster, it's more of a case study where students are now getting that feel for, okay, if I was doing scientific research. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the importance, as opposed to other kind of lab simulation type programs. They are very straightforward. They are, drag the microscope here, add this, add 3 milliliters of this particular solution. In Labster, it's more scientific inquiry. They're case study based. They're more where students can really explore different avenues and get that feel for actually doing research. So it's not, while it does have some components of drag this here, of the instructions like a lab manual, it does have that aspect of that case study of scientific inquiry embedded within the program. And that is something that is different than other simulations that you may encounter, which is just a step-by-step, drag the microscope here, add this light here, add this solution here. And it is different. When you start comparing it to the other lab simulations, you begin to see such a huge difference between them. So I would say, as an instructor, if your goal is to kind of incorporate scientific inquiry within your lab, then Labster is a really good tool to use, because it allows students to kind of explore those scientific concepts.
Yes.
Awesome. That's so great that your students are loving it and you all are, implementing it into your courses. And this is not a question that came up in the chat, but just curious how your students are liking, the multilingual aspect of Labster and simulations and resources.
I have yet to post that discussion. So by the end of the semester, we're on week 11 already, coming up this week. Oh, actually, this week is week 11. So probably right before Thanksgiving, I will be posting that for my students and asking them, have you tried this on Labster? What did you think? Please be honest. So I will have that response by the end of the semester. Because again, I haven't posted to the students yet. So I'm waiting for them to use it, and then I'll get a response from them. But I know it's available. And I just, like I said, I haven't received anything from my students. Have you questioned your students, Selinda? Yeah.
No, I haven't yet. But that is something that now that we know that resource is available, to kind of introduce it to them to see how it would impact how they study the material or how they connect those particular concepts.
Awesome. And another question here from the audience. So I know you spoke about your students loving using Labster. On your end, have you seen an engagement increase in your courses because of using a resource like Labster?
I would say so. I think we've seen an increase. What we've done lately, because we are now coming back to a face-to-face platform, we are starting to use it as kind of a supplemental tool where students can take it before they come into lab. So they do the lab simulations, they learn about the concepts, and then when they come into lab, they get that hands-on component. And I've seen it really have a difference and make a difference in the way students understand the material. Before the pandemic, it was very much they either came into class or they did the lab simulation, right? So we were able to kind of see the difference between both, right? Where they would just do the lab simulation, or those that came in face-to-face would do the hands-on material. But what we've begun to notice is it's a great supplemental tool.
Yes.
It's a great tool to have to kind of fortify or kind of increase students' understanding of the material as a supplemental tool. And it was really, really great. And because of that, we've seen engagement skyrocket. Now, even without that hands-on experience, students have been engaged and kind of going, okay, I wonder what the next step is going to be, or I wonder what the outcome will be. And so students are very curious. And that's one of the things I like sometimes about these simulations, is that you'll have students go, well, what happened if I mix this with this, and see what happens? And even as us instructors, as we're kind of playing around sometimes with the simulations so we can help our students better, we get kind of excited because we start saying, well, what happens if I were to mix this? Or what happens if I were to drag this over here? And that's part of, that's science, right? That's inquiry. And that's kind of where the engagement has come in from our students, where we see students getting kind of excited and saying, okay, I can play around with this and have like no consequences as far as, okay, the beaker kind of exploding, right? But that is part of that scientific inquiry, where it's in a safe area for them to explore.
I agree. We're integrating them. We're integrating our face-to-face with the online simulation. So the students just have a general, overview of the content, because again, they're not prepared sometimes. So if they have the simulations at home and you do it in practice, I think they just get a better understanding of the content overall. So we're trying to integrate it a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. And great that they're loving, the learning by failure aspect and being able to explore within the lab. is great. And next question, I think we've already answered it. So how have your students responded to Labster simulations? Do they enjoy the gamified aspects? Sounds like they're responding very positively, as you guys were just mentioning. So the next question here is, now that so many students are working as well as going to college, are STEM majors still within reach for them?
I think so. I think so. I think, you know, the STEM majors, it's a unique group, right? A lot of our STEM majors, for the most part, they try to come to school full time, right? Some of them are at home, but we always try to encourage our STEM majors to be here in class, right? Versus a non-major, those are the ones that usually take the online courses, but now we're seeing an integration of both. So it is a little bit different with them, right? With our STEM majors, because you want them to get the practice here in the lab. But again, Labster has been able to, again, to bridge that little gap between, you know, the online and the practical. So I think it's still within reach. I think, like I said, the school has to have a good STEM program. We have an engineering program that we just started this fall. We have another program that we're just going to start hopefully next fall to have like a gateway with UTSA. So we're going to start more courses, like new courses like genetics this coming fall. So I think that's one thing that I have mentioned before for Labster. I would like to see more specialty courses. I know that they're working on it, but there's not a lot of simulations there for botany, for zoo, for genetics. So I think we would like to have more of those to be able to encompass all the STEM majors, right? Because so far we have bio groups, but we really want the specialty courses because STEM is a little bit of everything, not just like the biology aspect of it. So, but yeah, I think we do. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, I would say so as well. One of the things that I know, kind of working within the colleges, one thing that I would like to see are some programs that show students, especially since the majority of them are now taking online courses, is how to develop better kind of time management skills, because that is one thing that I have seen students struggle, especially with STEM courses. It is a lot of work, and it can be very challenging. And one thing is maybe perhaps developing kind of an orientation course or something where administration can sit down or have students come in where they are able to work with them on how to have kind of better time managing skills or study skills to be able to kind of do that balance act, because it is a lot. It is a lot to take on a full-time working schedule as well as a full-time college schedule, and being able to say, okay, this is my time frame, and being able to see, okay, there's those resources and helping them out, because a lot of them are just not aware that when taking online courses that it is going to be a little bit of a challenge and know how to allocate that time.
Thank you both. Awesome. So next question here. The work you're doing is extremely inspirational, which I agree. What do you hope the future will look like for community colleges?
I mean, one thing that I would hope in the future to see, and something that we're actually starting now, is to be developing these articulation agreements with universities. So one thing that we've been doing as far as in the STEM side is developing kind of degree plans that are not only 2-year, but 4-year. So say to students, okay, this is where you're hoping to transfer to. These are the courses that you'll need to take to make that transition, that transfer so much easier for students, and to let them know, hey, these are the resources that are available, and to help them along the way. Right. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping that as an institution that we begin to kind of do more of. And we're starting along that path. It has been a little bit of work, but that is something that we're starting to do with our university partners, to be able to develop these degree plans that say, okay, students, you're starting off here. Here's some of the courses you can take. And then you'll just transition straight into starting your senior year of university, so you can kind of finish a little bit quicker. And by doing so, helping them stay on that path will get them to continue it to their graduate studies. And ultimately, that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that they stay on that path and that they continue with their degree, especially in STEM, so they can go for those higher degrees.
And she's in charge of doing that, by the way. Good job.
Awesome. So this question is related to what you're just speaking about the different pathways for your students. Right now, are your students mostly going on to enroll into bachelor's degree programs, or are they going out directly into the workforce after they graduate?
I think we have a combination of both. I think we have still a lot of students that are going to, transfer. Some students we do have an awesome workforce program here at our college. And I think we're seeing right now maybe a little bit more workforce, because I know we're starting some new workforce programs. Like we're trying to do the what is it called? The firefighters, whenever they go to a firefighting training academy, we're starting that program here. Not a firefighting academy, but all the basic stuff, and then they go do the physical stuff out there. So we're starting those. I know that we're also having new programs. For example, even though we're a 2-year community college, we do have a Bachelor of Science of Nursing. So that's vocational, but hey, now you can get your BSN here in 1 year at our college. And we are #1 in the state, by the way, in the nursing program. And then we just started a second Bachelor of Science in Organizational Leadership. So again, we see both, right? We're opening new workforce programs that is in demand, but we're also continuing with the traditional, Bachelor of Science degrees. So I think it's a little bit of both here. I don't know exactly the percentages or numbers, but Selinda, I don't know if you have any numbers specifically, but I think it's both.
I don't have specific numbers, but just kind of talking to some of my past students, I know a lot of them continue on to get a bachelor's degree, and then will go to physical therapy school. They'll go to being a physician assistant. They'll go into the allied health fields, going into medical school. I know a lot of them will pursue more of a health kind of relate, but we also do get some students that will go for biology, into agriculture, into customs. That's where we mainly kind of see our students head, but the majority of them will go on to pursue a degree, their bachelor's degree, and then some will continue on forward. We're hoping to kind of increase that number of students going or seeing a higher number of those students continue on to their graduate, but it's a little bit harder for us to kind of keep track of them once they kind of leave our college. But the ones that I've spoken to, some of my past students have kind of continued on into their professional degrees, which is very exciting. That's what we want to see, and that's what we're hoping, that it'll continue, or if not increase.
Increase, yeah, I think
Great.
so.
Yeah, it sounds like, no matter where your students are ending up, they're going on to do great things, whether it's for your institution or in the workforce. So it sounds like you're all definitely setting them up for success, which is amazing to hear. Another question here, with the financial aid requirements to take a certain number of credits, do you feel like that puts too much pressure on the non-traditional STEM students in community colleges?
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I know that some students struggle with the amount of credits that they have to take, as well as being kind of working full time. That is the tricky part. And then with financial aid, being able to take those amount of credits. And so students kind of struggle with trying to maintain their academic standing within those courses, while at the same time having those financial obligations outside of college. And that is always kind of the tricky part. And we do see students that try to maintain that academic standing. And this is where we've had to provide on the college side, a lot of those resources where students can talk to counselors or they can talk to advisors to see what they can do to help them out as they continue taking those courses. So it makes it a bit easier on them, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Selinda. You know, just college in general is stressful, right? They have so many pressures, and then pressures from households, from work. So I think we do try our best to do everything. We try to counsel them also early on in terms of advising, so that way they don't take too many credits, because we do see that also as a trend that we see where students have up to 90. I'm like, what are you still doing here? You should be somewhere else. So we're, oh, sorry. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Yeah.
Julie.
Did my camera go out?
Yes.
Oh my God, I don't know what I did. Hold on. Oh, I don't know what happened, guys. I apologize. I think something happened with my camera.
No worries. So it sounds like, you know, you all are doing a little bit of advising with your students. We've got a question here. You know, providing mentoring and support outside of the classroom is a challenge for any instructor. Where do Laredo College students go for mentoring toward a future STEM career?
That's mainly, we have advising that students go to in the student success type department that we have here. Now, one of the things that we do here I have at Laredo College is an early alert system. So as instructors, if we start seeing particular students begin to struggle, we alert them to the counselors, and the counselors will basically call them into their office, which they're basically kind of like their advisors for STEM. And be able to kind of talk to them and say, look, you're struggling, what's going on? And they're able to give them some advice or kind of encourage them to see what's going on. If an instructor, because sometimes I understand it's hard, especially if you have large classes, to be able to kind of advise every single student. So that's where we've kind of have that early alert system that we can kind of indicate to that advisor, to those counselors that work more specifically with that particular student, and say, hey, look, we're noticing the student is struggling. Can you talk to them, see what's going on, and seeing what resources may be available for that student to be able to become successful in those STEM classes.
Awesome. And we've got a last, not a question, it's just a comment going off of, you know, we're speaking about women in STEM earlier. It says, to add to the comment about finding a mentor, women already in STEM should also think about mentoring another female trying to break into a STEM field. Awesome. So doesn't look like there are any other questions from the audience here. We've got a couple minutes, so if anyone has any last minute questions, we'll give it another minute or so to see if there's anything else. And I'm not seeing any coming in, so we're coming up on time here, so I want to extend a big thank you to Selinda and Juliana for joining us today at So Connected and sharing your valuable thoughts and experiences with me and with our audience. And I want to thank all of our attendees for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedules to connect with us today. So thank you, everyone. And to close, I just got another question here. It says, this has been so inspiring. Thank you. So I think that's a great note to end on. So everyone, you know, have a great rest of your day. And the recordings will be posted within the next week. So thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.